Good morning and welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining our session today. Today's session will focus on Cscape 9.9 Service Pack 3, our latest software offering. The software and associated firmware will be available on our website for you to download after the session directly. We'll also publish a recording of this session. It'll be available in the support area of the website in the next 24 hours. In the control panel in your webinar, you have in the handouts area Cscape release notes. Feel free to download those at any point. Again, they'll also be available on our website shortly afterwards. For the duration of the presentation, please feel free to ask any questions you may have using the questions or chat options within the control panel. We'll be doing a live questions and answer session directly afterwards.
Hi, today we will be doing a Cscape Service Pack 3 walkthrough. Let's take a look at our agenda for today's tutorial. We'll start with a quick review of our software roadmap. Next, we'll talk about the new features and enhancements that will come with Service Pack 3, which we will make sure to include several demonstrations for. We will also go through bug fixes and new firmware that's required, and at the end we will do some questions and answers. So let's take a quick look at Cscape's roadmap. For those of you who are not as familiar with Horner or Cscape, Cscape is a primary software package which we created over 20 years ago to program our all-in-one controllers. We are committed to ensuring the best possible experience for our customers. This means providing a constantly up-to-date and consistent software package such as Cscape. In Cscape, there is only one way to configure things such as screen graphics, communications configuration, and hardware configuration. But we give our users a choice when it comes to their logic style. There are 3 languages built into Cscape with which users create their programs. The first language created was register-based advanced ladder, which means for each variable created, you must map it to a specific memory address. This is maintained being the most popular means of Cscape programming. The other advanced ladder language created is tag-based advanced ladder logic. We have, as of recently, been putting more emphasis on this logic style. In tag-based programming, you only have to map certain variables, specifically those which are tied to real-world inputs and outputs. An example of this would be an output needing to be matched to a specific output pin to turn a motor on. The benefit of tag-based programming is that other routine internal variables don't need to be mapped. The last language is not advanced ladder, but standardized IEC logic, which is becoming increasingly popular and is also a tag-based approach. The IEC logic is standardized, so we're not as creative with it as we are with our other advanced ladder logic styles. For the coming year, we have 3 significant software releases planned: Service Pack 3, which is imminent, Service Pack 4, and Cscape 10. Service Pack 3 is mostly focused on upgrading our advanced ladder tag-based logic, although it still has updates for other areas of Cscape, so don't worry, it's an upgrade for all of our customers. Service Pack 4, which will be released later this year, is focused on upgrading our IEC programming languages. Cscape 10 will be introducing a brand new graphics engine with many ground-up redesigns, including trends, alarms, recipe handling, and WebMI. Cscape 10 will also include a significant upgrade to the development environment for all aspects of programming on all-in-one controller. And by the way, Cscape will remain free. Okay. So now I'm going to walk through some of the new features and enhancements that we've included in Service Pack 3. One of our new features we're rolling out in quite a soft fashion is Cscape registration. Traditionally, to gain access to Cscape, you would go on our website, create an account, download Cscape, and then install the software to which you could work away on. With the introduction of Cscape registration, this process of using Cscape will essentially stay the same, but we've added an additional step after installation. You will now, once you've installed Cscape, have to log into your account. We've included this new feature as we're trying to provide a tight feedback loop between our customers and our engineers. From this, we hope to gain a better understanding of, for example, what features and languages you're using in Cscape, and not your personal information. With this, we can then better allocate our resources to improve the features that are mostly being used. As a user, the great thing about logging into your account means a consistent setup of Cscape no matter what device you log in on. and it will also smoothen the process of acquiring licenses. Initially, with Service Pack 3, Cscape registration will be disabled, although we will be working with some of our long-term customers to test it and ensure that everything goes smoothly on its full release. Another thing I must mention is that some of you may have been on our website recently and had to re-register your accounts. This is because we have recently had a large update in the security of our site, and we apologize for any inconvenience caused. In addition to Cscape registration, we have implemented what we call a universal login, which will allow you to log into any Horner website or any Horner software package with a single set of login credentials. So here's a quick snippet of what our universal login will look like. For this walkthrough, I'm going to divide the new features and enhancements of Service Pack 3 into 4 sections. Improvements to tag-based advanced ladder programming, graphics enhancements, Ethernet networking, and communication protocols. Let's start with improvements to the tag-based advanced ladder. We're beginning to put an emphasis on our customers to begin learning and using this method of advanced ladder because it is a more modern approach to variable handling than register-based, as it requires far less time mapping variables. We will be emphasizing its use by starting to transition our training programs to the tag-based approach over the upcoming months. For those of you who already have a large existing library of Cscape programs that are register-based, Service Pack 4 will provide the ability to convert those libraries into new tag-based versions. To make the tag-based approach more attractive and get more of our customers transitioning over, we've made a few significant upgrades. The existing package can support 10,000 variables, where this new package can support up to 50,000. We've included online programming, which is a method of making programming changes without stopping the controller. We've included support for user-defined function blocks, and also enhanced subroutine support. We've included a new power user feature, which is the ability to read and write to removable memory, to and from a structure. In addition to these major upgrades, we have also implemented some ease-of-use enhancements. We've predefined timer counters and PID structures to make it easier to use those features. We've predefined variables such as system bits and system variables. We've reorganized the data watch window to make it more tag-oriented. We've included more variable boxes so you can create them easily as you go. And lastly, we've enhanced variable access to a variety of different function blocks, for example, the math expression blocks. Lots of the changes that we've brought in Service Pack 3 are related to tag-based advanced ladder, so we need to make sure that you are properly set up to support it. To begin, in the top left-hand side of your screen, click the Tools tab. Scroll down to the bottom and access Application Settings. In this menu, you can determine which type of tools or logic styles you want to support in your Cscape application. The traditional register-based advanced ladder, full AC editing, or the advanced ladder with tags. The options to include the different logic styles are down the end, and we need to make sure that the advanced ladder with tagged addressing editor is checked. This ensures that when you begin to create a new Cscape application, the option to create a tag-based advanced ladder project is selectable. Now that we've completed our setup, we're going to create a tag-based advanced ladder project. So we click File, New Project, and choose Advanced Ladder with Tagged Addressing Editor. So now, looking at our project, you'll probably notice that it looks very similar to a register-based project. It has a project navigator, a project toolbox, icons up at the top. The main difference is the Program Variables window. With a register-based programming, we have I/O variables that we often have to use, but with tag-based, we've got this Program Variables dialog. Okay. For the moment, let's go take a look at the Program Variables window, as this is where we've primarily made changes in Service Pack 3. If we click on Global Variables, you'll see that we've added a series of predefined variables. For example, always on, always off, first scan, real-time clock system registers, and screen registers. These variables are ones that would often be used in register-based programming that we have predefined for our tag-based approach. You'll notice if you look at each variable that they are still mapped to a specific memory location. Even though one of the primary benefits with tag-based programming is that you have to do much less mapping, you still have to do mapping when it comes to system bits, system registers, real-world I/O like analog inputs and outputs, and digital inputs and outputs. Outside of global variables, we've also predefined a couple of structures for a 16-bit accumulator timer counter or a 32-bit accumulator timer counter. So now I'm going to show you how to use these predefined structures. When we drop a timer in our program, with register-based programming, we would define where the accumulator register is located, and it was implied that there's a housekeeping register after that. In tag-based programming, when we want to use a timer, we have to create a new variable, which we are going to do and call it motor timer. To do this, we have to go to Global Variables, right-click, go down and click Add Variable. We double-click to change our variable name, which we are going to call motor timer. And next, to define the type of our variable, we are going to take advantage of the structure timer counter 16, which has been predefined with a 16-bit accumulator and another 16-bit register that contains some flags for timing and done. So, now that I have motor timer defined, let's go change the type to timer counter 16. Now that we're ready, let's go build a simple rung that utilizes this timer. First, we'll grab a normally open contact and place it down, and we'll give it the name motor run, which is a previously declared Boolean variable. And we hit OK. And along the left hand side, right click to create a new rung. Now that we have a rung with a normally open contact at the beginning, let's place a timer down on it. So now the timer's popped up and is asking us to define the timer address. If we can scroll down, we will eventually find our motor timer variable, and if we expand it out, we can find our accumulator, which is what we want to use. This is called motortimer.acc. We also need to define a set point, or in other words, how long it's going to run. And I have a variable that I previously created that's called motor time, which I will select as the set point. Now we have a timer that will time as long as the motor is running, and that will expire when that motor time variable is reached. I'm going to start by placing a normally open contact here, and what I want to do is access the timer done flag. I find the timer done flag by clicking this drop down, scrolling down to the bottom, expanding motor timer, and selecting motor timer.flags. For the timer we're using, we want to make sure we are using the 16-bit timer done flag, and we do this by adding a 0.16 at the end of the variable name. This is the flag that will effectively turn on when the timer expires. So now we just add a new rung and we're finished. So hopefully this has illustrated to you one of the easier ways to use timers and counters in the tag-based advanced ladder version of Cscape. One of the most powerful features in tag-based programming are user-defined function blocks. A user-defined function block is a powerful way to reuse sections of code. They differentiate themselves from subroutines as you can have multiple instances of user-defined function blocks, all running simultaneously with their own dedicated sets of variables. So if you look over at the project navigator in the top left, you'll see the normal main loop modules, subroutine modules, and below that you have the UDFB modules, which is unique to tag-based programming and IEC package programming. I've created a UDFB called start-stop. The functionality of this is to start and stop a motor, with a delay time before it's started and a maximum runtime for the stop. When you create a user-defined function block, you'll notice that a new section is created for it in your project variable window. So in this example, mine is called start-stop. Let's take a look at which variables I dedicated to this user-defined function block. I have a series of input variables: start push button, stop push button, delay time and runtime. I have a single output variable, motor, which displays whether it's running or not. And lastly, I have delay timers and run timers, which are just used internally. These are not designated as input or output variables. With this, we have the ability to create a unique instance of UDFBs that are running this exact code. So taking a look at my main loop, you can see that we've got 3 different specific instances of this particular user-defined function block, each with its own set of input variables and output variables. Again, these UDFBs can be run simultaneously. There are multiple instances of this UDFB which is going at once, and this is the biggest difference between UDFBs and a subroutine. Now, let's move on to some enhancements we made to our subroutines. Within the project that we were using earlier, I created a subroutine called liquid volume to go along with it. This is a simple subroutine which calculates the volume of liquid in a tank. One of the enhancements we included is now we have input and output variables for subroutines. So for example, I can go here to liquid volume in my variable table, expand it, and see that I've created a couple of input variables: tank diameter in feet, liquid levels in counts, an output variable, liquid in gallons, and a few internal variables. These variables make it easier when we're calling the subroutines, but don't actually affect the writing of our subroutines. So let's go back to the main loop and see how calling the subroutine is different with the inclusion of these new variables. We can see the enhancement when we double click our subroutine, that we can now easily assign the inputs that are going to it and the outputs that are coming from it. You may realize it looks quite like a UDFB, but keep in mind, you can only have one instance of a subroutine running at a time. Unlike UDFBs, where you can have multiple instances running simultaneously. An online programming change is the ability to change the logic in your controller without stopping it first. To do this, you download the program logic only into the OCS, and when that's complete, the program that's been running the whole time is seamlessly switched to the new program. You also have a revert button if things didn't go as expected and you want to revert back to your original project. So let's show you how this works. Online programming mode is controlled by these set icons up at the top of your toolbar. So to enter, I hit this icon, which prompts me asking, do I want to enter online programming mode? I click yes, and now I'm in. My target indicator down the bottom right of my screen will display an S during online programming mode. This stands for safe mode. You may notice while I'm in online programming mode that my download button has disappeared. So if I want to download while in online programming mode, instead I click this button here to initiate the download of the program logic. It now informs me that the modified logic program has been loaded to the target, and by pressing OK, I am initiating the switch to the new program. Once I click OK, I am now running the new program, and if I want to revert back to my original instance of the program, I could click the revert button here. As I said earlier, Service Pack 3 is not only a tag-based update, as now I'm going to move on to some of the other areas we've improved. We've made some general graphics improvements, including a much requested change, which is the ability in the micro series to change the number of objects on an individual screen from 30 up to a now 100. For the X4, X7, XLE and the XLTE, SSL encryption will now be supported for both email and WebMI, as those features are currently supported unencrypted. This means the use of Gmail will now be possible on these units. Moving on to some networking and Ethernet features, we're adding DHCP, which we are allowing support with our XL series products from the XL4 up. We're also including more support for DNS, as it is mainly used through our email functionality, but now will come standard with all of our products. We've also made some enhancements on the communications front, with more flexibility on your Modbus TCP client or master applications. One enhancement is the ability to enable and disable the master, if you want to, for example, close the port and reopen it, which is essentially a virtual reset. You will have the ability to enable or disable slaves, so when they go down, they don't adversely affect communications. MQTT Sparkplug is a new IoT-based protocol that's coming with Service Pack 3. MQTT allows products to push data as opposed to only having data pulled from their memory. It allows you to publish data as topics and control when data is pushed by the OCS, whether that's periodically, on a trigger, on a change of state, or change of value. Next, let's take a look at the new LAN configuration for the XL series. First, go to the top of your screen and click the hardware configuration icon. Click here for the configuration button for LAN 1, and you can now see that we have additional options. So as before, we have IP address, netmask and gateway, but now additionally DNS server. These are all assignable either as hard-coded in Cscape or assigned to variables, as I've done here. Another new addition is the DHCP checkbox. So if I wanted to, I could use the DHCP server to access these parameters instead of the other options. Another capability we've added to the Service Pack 3 is the enhancements to protocols like our Modbus TCP client. We've given customers the ability to disable the protocol as a whole or disable communications with individual slaves. The best way to illustrate this is through the graphics screen. So what I have is an example where I have 3 variable frequency drives and I'm communicating with them over the Modbus TCP. But what you'll see here is I've now added an online-offline button to each slave on my screen, as I have the ability to dynamically enable and disable individual Modbus slave devices. So let's see how that's implemented. We access Modbus TCP master configuration from the hardware configuration icon at the top of your screen. From here, we click on LAN configuration, which is down under network ports. Then, down the bottom of your screen, under downloadable protocols, you'll see Modbus client, which is effectively Modbus TCP master. So if you click on the network option for your Modbus client, you'll see you now have a Modbus disable option to disable the protocol as a whole. This can be used as a reset on the communications, at least on the master side, as what it effectively does is closes the port and reopens it the next time it's enabled. In this example, I'm showing you that on the device level, we now have a disable bit for each slave device as well. So by flipping that switch, we can temporarily take that slave offline without having an effect on other communications, which we can then easily click to enable and bring back online. For our last demo before moving on, I'm going to go through the configuration for MQTT Sparkplug, which is a new IoTT protocol which we've added in Service Pack 3. To configure MQTT, we need to go to the program menu in the top left of your screen, look down to messaging and then go across to MQTT. So when MQTT first opens on the first level, we have to decide what profile of MQTT we want to use. Ultimately, we'll have profiles here for Amazon AWS, Microsoft's Azure and others, but for now we have Sparkplug, so we're going to select that option. Next, we click onto the controller level through clicking here along the top of the window. On the controller level, we are configuring the OCS to push data to a broker. To do this, we configure a status register or a series of status registers. where we will monitor our communications with the broker. We have to assign a variable which will enable MQTT communications. We must also assign a unique client ID. This can be anything, but it must be unique. MAC addresses are always unique, so we've made it easy for you to use your MAC address as your client ID. The next parameter to be set is a group ID, which is a logical way to group a series of OCSs that might be pushing data together. So, for example, the group Indie Plant might be describing this OCS and others pushing data from an Indie Plant together. The last parameter, Node ID, is the specific ID associated with this particular OCS that's pushing data. In this case, I'm simulating a molding machine, so I've named it Molder1. So that's the controller level configured. Next, we must configure the broker level, which you access through the tab bar across the top. We need to define how we're going to connect to the broker, including things like which IP address to use, login credentials, and encryption if that applies. We then also have to define a series of topics, which we then have to push to the broker. So first, I've defined a topic, process data, which contains 3 variables, mold temperature, mold pressure, and mold time. And I'm going to push data to the broker every 5 minutes. One thing to note about MQTT Sparkplug is all data I publish has the capability of coming back to me as subscribed data. But in this case, I'm primarily sending out process data, so I don't expect it to come back. I've also got another topic here called setpoints. The setpoints topic contains 3 variables. Setpoints for my mold temperature, for my mold pressure, and for my mold time. This is data, although it is published, I'm fully expecting to come back to me from this data package or whoever connects to me on the other end of the broker. In this topic, I'm only going to publish information on a trigger, so that if locally, let's say, a set point is made in the plant, that change can then be pushed to the broker and then it will be seen by the data package on the other side. Okay, so now we're going to go through some required firmware and bug fixes. Most of the features that we have covered will require a firmware update to version 15.40. Looking at the table in front of us, you can see that every additional feature, except for Cscape registration and the tag-based programming improvements, need the 15.40 update. You can also see from the table that I've categorized the features and which controllers they apply to. The first group on the top applies to all modern controllers, whether that be the XLT, Micro Series, RCC, etc. The 100 object screen will apply to the X4 and X7, and the email WebMI encryption will apply to the X4, X7, XLE, and XLTE. So the use of Gmail will now be possible with the new update to 15.40. The DHCP, DNS, and MQTT Sparkplug capabilities will be possible with the XL series, as well as the X5 or RCC range, but not including the RCC 6512. Bug fixes are quite a small part of this software package, and hopefully you didn't encounter any of the ones on this list. I won't go into details on any except the 5th one down, the micro OCS analog stability improvement. We greatly enhanced the filtering on the analog, some of this coming with the 15.40 update. There is also significantly better stability, particularly on the 4 to 20 mA and RTD inputs for the micro OCS series. Just to reiterate, for most of these new features, the new 15.40 firmware is necessary. So, when can I get it? Service Pack 3 is currently available on our website for download, and we would like to apologize for any delays caused. We're very excited for this release as we think the beta testing went very well, and we'd like to thank our beta testers out there for their continued hard work.
Okay, I hope that was of benefit to you all. We have several questions in, we'll go through them as we find them. First one in here is, can we share UDFBs across projects? Yes, you can. In the project navigator, if you right click on the UDFB, you can export it as a .cpu file. and place it in whichever library you want to, and import it into your program as you see fit. Obviously, as mentioned, you can also OEM lock them. Question is, does MQTT help defined in SP3? Yes, it is. All the new features and enhancements in SP3 are detailed in the Cscape help file that comes with it. Are we able to support PDF files on screen? Not currently. Plans in place for Cscape 10 to support various formats, including PDF, to display on the controller screen. How can you smooth an analog input value? I'm not sure which controller you're specifically talking about. Maybe 1540, as described there, will help you along if it's one of the micro OCSs. Otherwise, you can use the filter constant within the hardware setup itself for the analog inputs. There's a digital filter that you can use within there. What operations can we do during online programming? Currently, changes only in the logic. For the XL Plus and future controllers, we'll also have the option to do online graphics changes. Can we get more information on MQTT? Yes, as I said, there is obviously detail in the Cscape help file that's just been released. We'll also offer webinars that will give more detailed analysis of the new features and enhancements on Service Pack 3 and the Service Pack 4 on Cscape 10. So they'll be coming, they'll be available on the website and live. Are we able to use WebMI with RCC? Yes, you are. When using the RCC for WebMI, obviously, you'll need to use the web designer in the hardware configuration tab and develop your web pages using the web designer at whichever resolution suits, and then host it on the RCC. Is Sparkplug suitable for Mosquito? Yes, Mosquito Broker was one of the platforms we used while developing MQTT. RabbitMQ was another. Will you be running webinars in the features of SP3? Yes, as I just said, we will be running webinars on MQTT, UDFBs, and the various other features that we described today. Okay, sorry, that's back to the analog input question. Yes, smooth them in the analog input section in the hardware configuration. As I said, use the filter constant in there. If you're still having difficulties, contact technical support and we'll help you along. Is a firmware update required to increase objects per screen from 30 to 100 on the X4? Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. You'll need 1540 to do that. DHCP, the IP changes if removed from network. Oh, okay. I think I understand what you're asking. Yeah, for DHCP, it's down to the programmer because obviously if you're in a test facility designing your program on a network that will not be in use in the real world, you'll need to be careful. There's a question here on predefined variables. I don't understand the question because there isn't any. If you could repeat that question. Why is IEC not as prominent this time? Service Pack 4 will introduce enhanced IEC. Service Pack 4 will be available very shortly. Can you share the PowerPoint with us? Yes, we can. Send a request to technical support if you would, and we'll send you on the presentation. Not seeing anything else here. I'm not getting a response on that question about predefined variables, so I don't know how to answer it because unfortunately it's not a question. If you could just contact technical support after the presentation and we'll discuss it there. Could it be possible to develop a function to compare two softwares, as in two programs? That is something that we are developing. Yeah, that's something we have considered for quite some time now, and that's something we are developing. I can't give you a time frame on that, but certainly it's in process. Is Cscape 10 available this year? Cscape 10 should be available Q1 2021. Okay, folks, I think that's all of the questions that I've got answered. So thank you all for your time today. To repeat, we'll be hosting similar events in the future, particularly for the new features of Service Pack 3, MQTT, and user-defined function blocks in the near future. And don't forget to download the software and associated firmware when we're done here. So have a good day, and thank you.